Warui Deshou is made in association with Wave Motion Canon, a website featuring writing from anime community personalities such as Coda and Minovsky Article, as well as podcasts like Senpai Coast to Coast. Head to wavemotioncanon.com to find out more. This episode of Warui Deshou is brought to you by Weeaboo's Fine Liquors, featuring custom-made bottles of your favorite anime ladies and gentlemen, filled with exquisite flavored liquors such as Tequila Kill and Vodka Monogatari. Weeaboo's, bringing you the taste you love with the craftsmanship you crave.
悪いでしょう。はじめ。
Hey everyone, welcome to Warui Deshou, an anime podcast. This is episode 0, and I'm the Subtle Doctor, here with my two distinguished co-hosts. First, to my left, we've got the First Lady of Warui Deshou. She hates your favorite anime, and hates your waifu too. It's Vorgalia. How you doing, Vorgalia?
Hello. Is this the reputation I've made for myself?
I'm afraid so. Also with us, we've got Europe's #1 Kai Kisuke. That's Shadon is here. Hi, Shadon. How's it going?
That statement that the doc just then made, if that was written out, it would have an asterisk next to it, and then in very small print further down, it would said, not actually true. But thank you anyway for the compliment. Good to be here.
Oh, you're the only notable one. I don't follow the scene, but you're the only one I know, so that counts.
I think that's probably not to do with my satchel skill of the game, let me be honest.
I've seen your IKs. You have talent.
Yeah, when I see you play, you're always beating people and bragging about it, so I just assume this guy's good.
Oh, well... Things happen, you know. People die. Some people live and some people die. It's Sophie's choice in video games. Although it's more my choice, Shaden's choice, which is kill them all.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shaden, is that... Would you prefer it pronounced that way?
Is it Shaden or is it Shadon?
To be honest, either works. You guys can call me Shaden, that balding git, the man who instant killed me and made me salty, the man who insulted my waifu. There are many names for me.
You can't really use Shaedong. That doesn't really work as well as Shadong.
Shaedong? So Shaedong sounds some sort of like Pan-Asian Bronx rapper. Shaedong here with the hot beats.
That's a very, very specific example that you've called to mind.
It's a niche market, and I'm willing to tap it.
So, are you guys nervous?
No.
Oh, I hear the stuttering in your voice.
I'm fine.
Have you guys been on a podcast before?
I have not.
I have not.
Well, the two podcast version rubs hands together gleefully, etc.
Sound effects.
I suppose it's another cherry to pop.
I'm not what you'd call a veteran myself, anyway. I mean, I've been on a couple, but not as a host. I was a guest. So I guess you might say that while I'm not a podcast virgin, this is something like a new position for me that we're trying out. So I'm also a bit nervous.
New position, virgin. I see what you did there. Smooth.
So what's been going on with you guys? Vorgalia, what you been up to this week?
In terms of what?
In terms of life. In terms of anything. No. Any nerd pursuits or big real life happenings you want to discuss?
I've been watching the X-Files. Kill me.
Oh, like the 90s X-Files?
And Hokuto no Ken. Kill me.
Can I just point out that you've just said within the same sentence I have been watching the X-Files and then Hokuto no Ken. If there is a Venn diagram of fans who watch both that and that, I think you're the tiny little dot in the middle where the overlap is so slight you need a zoom level of 400% to see it.
Well, I'm a person of many talents / interests / everything, so that's why I'm on this very significant, culturally significant podcast.
Absolutely.
Extremely significant. By the way, I think you are in fact the one person who watched both of those shows this week. And I say that as someone who adores Hokuto no Ken. I mean, I love it. But I've not actually seen the X-Files myself because when it was airing, it just wasn't something I was into. So what, are you going back and rewatching it for any particular reason?
I've been playing the video game. X-Files, Resist or Serve on the PS2.
What?
Yep.
God damn, that is a deep cut.
Yeah.
How are you coping, Varg?
Don't ask.
I think that says it all. The silence,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, speaks volumes.
Have you encountered any extraterrestrial nonsense?
Do you believe?
Yes. Someone like made X's out of like duct tape on windows and computer monitors, and so stupid, only an alien must have thought of it.
Right.
So this is definite proof of extraterrestrial life, right?
In quote-unquote intelligent life?
I don't think there was any intelligence involved
No.
in the life that
No.
made those crosses.
What? It's not a cross. It's an X. That's
Oh,
the
I
significance. Because X-Files,
I see.
I think this might be too deep for me.
and they're your save points.
Oh, right. No, I'm really still not getting it.
Yeah, like I said, aliens, very intelligent beings, much higher intelligence than we humans possess and stuff.
Has there not been I mean, that's not the newest X-Files game, is it?
Not if it was on the PS2, that's for sure.
It's on the there's a newer X-Files game?
It's probably on Newgrounds. And it's probably terrible. I hope you've got Safe Search turned on if you're looking in Google for that. Fox Mulder Pictures. Safe Search off. Horrible things will happen.
I mean, I understand, though, why you've been watching Hokuto no Ken. I mean, I don't need to ask that question.
I've been labbing the PS2 game. That's why. The Shoegazer, you might be familiar with Shoegazer, is like, watch the show!
Yoshu.
And there you go.
And so I did.
And so you did. Is that all it takes? Have you never seen it?
No, and I haven't finished it yet. I'm at the Souther arc, which is the best arc so far.
It's so good. Oh, it gets... So did you start at the beginning and make it all the way there?
Yeah.
I'm
like-
so impressed. I
like
mean, that's...
4 days or something.
Wow.
Like, yeah, the Souther arc is so amazing. It's like they hired a director specifically for it because it has cool shots and cinematography and stuff.
And that throne.
That throne.
It's so good.
I should point out that I know very little about Hokuto no Ken at this point, and I have never seen it. But when one of the points of recommendation you make is that throne, I feel more compelled to watch it now. I must find out what this throne is.
It's a pretty good.
It's
yeah,
an incredible
It's
throne.
worth like 58 episodes to see that throne.
And so this is why I'm so impressed, because the beginning of that show...
No, the suspension
not
of
great.
disbelief needed to watch the first like 40 episodes, especially in the like Mamiya village arc with the whatever that gang was. The suspension of disbelief needed is huge.
But it has to warm up your senses. It has to prepare you for the insanity.
I guess.
It has to commit to foreplay with you.
At some point, it's like Stockholm syndrome. It's stupid. But you can't help but watch it because it's stupid.
It's so true.
Like, okay, this stupid. Okay, I don't care.
Ah, ta 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 ta.
Continue.
You're already dead, etc. Boom. White
Oh,
blood.
boy.
But the point where you are, it just keeps getting better. Like, so each arc, you're like, okay, this is the best arc. Oh wait, no, this arc with Rao is the best. And I haven't seen Hokuto no Ken 2 just because after like 105 or so episodes I needed a break, but it does ramp up and continue to improve and get more. You just get more like, I can't believe, when you start out the show, you won't believe what I'm saying right now, but you get emotionally invested in those characters.
This is a show, if I remember correctly, where a man kicks a man so hard he actually manages to mold his stomach while doing
That's
so.
That's accurate.
That's
Fifth of the North Star.
that's everyday business.
Oh, everyday business.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm not getting mixed up.
He does that in like every episode, whatever.
That's a good thing.
He, like touches you in your face, and your face explodes.
I'm very glad you said in the face, then. I thought you were going to say something else. I'm very glad you did not follow with what I thought you were going to say.
No, this was only the 80s. They hadn't crossed that line in anime yet.
You didn't get to the 90s at that point where everything turned to schlock.
Yeah, this is a family-friendly show with people exploding in blood and stuff.
Can I point out that the comic book that this is based on, the manga, was a Shonen Jump comic book. It was written for young boys.
I hear it's the most violent thing ever.
Yes, it is.
Wow. That's like deciding that for your film studies class when you're still in early high school that they're going to show you Cannibal Holocaust.
Did you find anything interesting on Google, or shall we move off X-Files?
We're talking about X-Files. Oh, I see.
Well, you embarked on a Google search, and then just to fill time, I started talking about Hokuto no Ken.
Thank God he didn't start on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I can't find a list of X-Files games. Resist or Serve seems to be the latest from what I can see.
Okay, and when did that come out?
2004.
God damn it, it has been a long time.
Lord.
Remember what happened? Remember what games were in 2004? Resident Evil clones.
Half-Life 2.
Oh no.
So it's one of those.
Oh,
it's
no.
X-Files with zombies.
Grand.
That works so well.
Yeah, I mean, the show, at least the first few seasons, are all about the ambiguity of stuff and how, like, you can... Something that might seem to be an extraterrestrial event or something, an unexplained stuff. Something like that might as well be something usual that's just misinterpreted. But nope. Video game, just zombies. Yeah. Shoot them, I guess.
It sounds like you could replicate the effects of this game by modding House of the Dead to have full Mulder's model in it. And I think that'd probably be better, actually.
Perhaps.
Bring back House of the Dead. Bring it back.
Typing of the Dead. There you go.
House of the Dead doesn't have an enemy with his torso cut off that runs on a trolley, and you have to drop a car on him 5 times to kill him. It doesn't have that. An enemy that's immune to bullets, that you have to drop a car on him.
I'm trying to puzzle out the logistics of that in my head, how one would drop the same car or different cars 5 times in a row.
It's in a garage with like a car lifter thing. I'm good at English.
I think I might have to play this. Seeing is believing, after all.
Well, the truth is out there.
Okay, Shadan/Shaden.
Yep.
What have you been up to this week?
Where to begin? Well, I wrapped up my playthrough. I got a tongue tied there. My playthrough of Fallout 4. Apart from that, I have also been watching more Ruby, RWBY.
Sure.
Playing more Guilty Gear Xrd as well. Came out on the PC last week, and I've been enjoying it immensely, despite some technical difficulties.
Oof.
The port's not perfect, but, well, I'll give them a chance just to at least try and fix it, unlike the EU patch problem for the PSN, but that's a can of worms we'll not open here. Other than that, I have been in work, which I won't talk about because work is dull and boring and miserable and grey.
Of course.
Anyway, of course it is. And I also went out drinking on Saturday night, and silliness happened, because silliness always happens when I go out drinking. I did come back home with my pants on, you'll be pleased to know.
I'm actually displeased to know that. I'm disappointed in you, I have to say.
Well, I will bear that in mind for next time. I will take your comments on board, Doc, and I will bear them in mind for what I do next time I go out.
Very good, very good. So you threw out a lot there. I would like to unpack a little bit of it.
So how was Fallout 4?
How many hours?
Approximately 40, I believe.
Okay, that's low.
Did you enjoy Fallout 4?
You already know my feelings on this, Fog. You've been watching my Twitter feed. Let me put it this way, right? To the writers at Bethesda, whoever you may be if you are listening to this
Writers.
To the monkey.
Yes, I think Vorg actually might be used to punch on the points I was going to make. But essentially, there's a phrase of don't quit your day job, but there is an opposite to that, which is do quit your day job because you're terrible. Because you have no idea what pacing is.
No.
This is an open world game where you're meant to be playing a father looking for his son, and yet the first thing that happens out of the gate is, oh, could you help us form this militia to defend the countryside? Sure, righty, Skip, I can do that, why golly.
I'm sure that's like word for word one of the dialogue options.
I hate the game, and I didn't even touch the main quest.
The main quest only gets sillier from there on out. The thing is, like, the main quest is meant to be about finding your son, and... well, no spoilers here, really, because it's kind of obvious you do eventually find him. And then it kind of divulges from there into a moral quandary of allowing robots free will. But every time that...
well, that sounds interesting.
It sounds interesting in theory. In practice, it's not explored at all. Every time that point came up, I just thought, gee, could I be watching Blade Runner right now? I really think I should be. Oh, well, I'll crack on. I've got to kill this super mutant. Anyway. So... but
when you're faced with that choice in your life, do I do what I'm doing right now or stop and watch Blade Runner? Very few things withstand that Sophie's choice.
It happens more often than you might think. But yeah, apart from the quibbles I have with the story, which are that it's absolutely awful, I've actually enjoyed the game a fair bit. There's some great moments when you're exploring places like... there was a scene I remember where I went into this bathroom. There's a skeleton in the bathtub. And around him are 3 colonial-era mannequins with muskets. Not muskets, sorry, machetes, rather. That are all poised like to strike him. Yet you've seen this scene as well, Rod. And in the sink nearby is, I think, Buffout, or one of the drugs in the game, essentially. That, to me, was infinitely more effective than anything they actually tried to do with people talking. Because it told me an interesting mode, like, you know, end of the world, this guy's lost his mind, so he's obviously going to get completely jacked up on illegal drugs and simulate being murdered in his bathtub. Crazy, but hey. And also, I believe his head was possibly in the toilet as well, so I don't know what happened there, but...
that's one interpretation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really interesting. I feel like, yeah, they should probably take advantage of environmental storytelling more.
Yeah, that's the exact phrase.
There's not a lot of it, though, unfortunately. Like, that one was a rare moment.
Yeah. I keep thinking to myself, like, what would have I done if I was writing the story to make it better? And I think the thing that they should have done is, rather than showing the murder of your wife or husband at the very start, simply have you get out of the pod opposite is empty, and then just follow a trail of clues. And then you know, like, oh, I can take this at a better pace rather than, oh, I just witnessed my wife being murdered before I got put back in the freezer again, and now I'm suddenly just, you know, going to wander around the wasteland aimlessly for 40 hours.
That's a good point.
Just little changes to basically slow down the pace. Like, I think back to Fallout 3. Similar sort of premise, you're going searching for a missing family member. But in that one, when you leave Vault 101, your dad is missing but not in immediate peril. Whereas you literally, the first thing you remember after you get defrosted the second time is, oh, my wife got shot by a man who shares the name of a UK cereal company. Yeah, Kellogg's a dumb name, just going to say that right now. I kept thinking he was just going to start throwing boxes of Rice Krispies at me. So overall, B-, could be better.
Did you get into the building and the tinkering at all?
No, I thought that was the most tacked-on, worthless waste of time I've encountered in an open-world game in a long while.
I got into it, but only because it allowed me to, it allowed you to destroy stuff, which gave you materials to craft other...
That's it. But I tore down everything I could, but I did not build anything that wasn't strictly necessary to run the settlement. Not a thing. I mean, I imagine there are people, probably, say, Minecraft or Terraria fans out there, who would love that mode.
I'm a Terraria fan, right? And that mode was not for me. That mode was kind of trash.
There's no way that it could be as full-blooded and fully featured as one of those games. I bet it feels really stripped down.
No,
kind of clunky.
No,
if I had to, I'm not touched.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, and that's again is part of my point in that it just felt very tacked on to say, oh, you could build settlements and stuff as a bullet point on the back of the proverbial box, if you will. But it just wasn't worthwhile. In the end, would get messages saying, "Oh, this settlement's being attacked. Will you go and defend it?"
Nah.
And I thought, let me think about that. No.
Yeah.
Let them burn.
Nope. I didn't give a damn at that point.
It's like they put it in to compensate for the lack of everything else in the game, which at this point turned into like an open world shooter.
I was okay with the shooting elements, actually.
The shooting elements are fine, but I don't play Fallout to shoot stuff. I play Fallout to, I don't know, roleplay.
Roleplay. There was very, very little roleplay in this, and it really didn't help that the voice acting system... Here's my point. Voice acting in Fallout, I am not adverse to it on principle.
I liked it.
But, two things. One, write dialogue that's actually worth a damn, and two, I find it incredibly ironic that a game that is about robots disguised as humans would actually hire a robot disguised as a human to voice the main character.
Oh, damn. No, female voice actor was great, which I picked.
I've not tried the female one, but the male voice actor was a complete flatline. I really literally think he phoned it in from his home while drunk.
I've never played a Fallout game.
Don't say that out loud. Play 1 and 2. So
I should. So is Guilty Gear PC also B-?
No, it's I would say it's an A- with potential if they actually patch out some of the problems with it, but they're only technical. So like netcode not being quite up to snuff. The fact that I've seen better resolution menus on the PS1.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's really, really like there are ways of fixing it, but they're third party. I tried it. And bear in mind, this is just specific to my PC, so I'm not necessarily saying this would be the same for everyone else. But for some reason, I started getting strange colour errors. Like, it went back to some sort of strange, weird, like, muddy colour palette, and everything looked wrong. So I just thought, you know what, for the sake of the UI, which I'm not even going to be spending my time focusing on, forget it. I'll wait for them to fix it. So apart from the technical issues, I'm really enjoying it. I only have a PS3, you see, I don't have a PS4, so the upgrade in the graphical fidelity is very noticeable. And I'm also very pleased with the value I got for it. It was only £18, which included...
Yeah, like 23 euros/dollars.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it was only £18 for all DLC, all colours, all system voices. Also a soundtrack came, the vocal soundtrack came with it, including Wanna Be Crazy, which was not previously released prior to this, as I understand it. A good investment, I think. I'll keep me going for a while until Revelator comes out, although I do find it a shame that Revelator will 99% likely not get a simultaneous PC release, but I can dream, can't I? I can dream of the land of milk and honey when that happens. So I'm enjoying that.
Well, that's good. The soundtrack alone, like, gives that purchase tremendous value.
Definitely.
They're so good.
I do love the vocal tracks. I sense some discontent from Vorg's direction there. There was a bit of grumbling.
I don't like Arx's music.
Don't bash Daisuke. No Daisuke bashing.
I'll let it slide, Vorg. I mean, it's an acquired taste. It is basically...
Okay. Hokuto no Ken was made by Arxis, and the soundtrack on that is good. That's like the one Arxis soundtrack I like. There you go.
I'll have to check it out.
There you are.
What sort of music is it?
It's Arxis music.
Okay, so more like J-rock or whatever.
But it's more melodic.
Lyrics that make absolutely no sense.
The best kind.
The best kind, yes, absolutely. Unless they're incomprehensible, like Black Onslaught.
Better atmosphere than just mashing on a guitar and playing notes.
Look, I've listened to Metallica's Saint Anger album. That is the absolute nadir of mashing on instruments.
Oh, that album's terrible.
That album is the album where it sounds like Lars Ulrich's drum kit is being pushed down a flight of stairs.
It sure does. It sounds really rough.
Not very familiar with the genre.
Let's put it this way, Var. Once that listening to Saint Anger should be like some sort of like inoculation. It's like having a vaccination against other music. Because once you've listened to that, anything that's not as bad as that suddenly seems so much better.
Like as sort of to balance out your taste and opinions.
Yeah. It's like knowing you have to watch something so awful that way suddenly everything becomes better by comparison. I mean, I like Metallica. I really like their old stuff. I think they're one of my favourite bands. But Saint Anger, while I appreciate it as a necessary kind of, post-breakup, post-messy kind of facing, like it was a necessary thing to make, but I won't be proud of it.
Well, so this week I have been let's see, what have I been getting up to? Oh, there is a pretty cool thing going on Anna Twitter, which is what anime people call their group of friends on Twitter, Anna Twitter.
Okay.
If you have an anime avatar, you may or may not belong to Anna Twitter. Anyway, so one of my dear friends, Coda is her screen name. She's at 80s Anime. Has started a Record of Lodoss War group watch. And so started this in, I believe, early November. And every Tuesday, Thursday, you're meant to watch one episode and kind of tweet about it, use the same hashtag. So it's meant to be like we're all watching it together, but I mean, most of the group kind of doesn't get to watch at the same time. So it still feels a little asynchronous, but it's still fun to see what everybody thinks of that stuff.
Is that because of people just working to different time schedules?
It is.
Ah, right, yeah, because you can run video share over Skype. I've done that in the past for watching awful things and also streaming awful things as well, which I will not talk about just yet because, well, I've not quite yet cleansed the shame from my body.
Well, please finish that. Finish cleansing yourself.
It's been going for a couple of years now, and it seems no signs of stopping.
Let us, you have our support. You have our full support.
Thank you, Doc.
But Lodoss War is, like, I don't know, have you guys seen it? I mean, it's, or know of it?
I've know of it just from seeing it on your Twitter, funnily enough, but otherwise I know nothing of it beyond that.
I see. Okay. So it's a pretty, like, straight up fantasy RPG sort of thing.
Nope.
This was before I feel like anime was making like tons of these, and specifically tons of like, we're trapped in an MMO RPG like anime. So this is pre-MMO. This is early 90s, of course. And it's also not like they made, there's an anime that's, I forget when it was, like mid-2000s, called Tower of Druaga, that is similar, but it's like it's meant to be like poking fun at role-playing conventions. Lodoss War is not it's not a parody. It's just like a straight up like, yep, elves, yep, dragons, wizards, let's do it.
Daily quests, grinding, premium currency, gold sellers. Or is that a bit before its time?
Probably before its time.
Oh, right. Before things got really bad.
Right, yes. And it looks really pretty. The animation in particular in the first episode is really, really strong. And it drops off from there, but the art is so good that it's still kind of nice to watch, even though the animation techniques are more limited as it goes on. And I find it noteworthy for, A, because of the whole group watch thing, and B, because, I don't know, I'm revisiting something that I watched a long time ago. I bought this show kind of sight unseen when I was like 17 years old. And I remember watching it and thinking, this is bad. It's not doing anything for me. And I don't know, I just didn't appreciate it very much.
So you went back and looked at it with different eyes and different standards, basically being more knowledgeable or having had your standards changed over time.
Totally. I mean, 15 years later, it just fits into the context of the history of anime better for me.
Your horizons expanded. Yes,
seen more, so I appreciate, the art and things like that. And the story's not as bad as I remember it, but it feels a little... It doesn't feel as tight as I'd like it, but it's still really fun. It has hot elf girls as well, which is always a plus for this sort of thing.
So this was from what I recall you saying in the early 90s.
That's right. I want to say 93, 92.
So this was filling the hot elf girls gap before we were introduced to Liv Tyler as Arwen in Lord of the Rings.
God.
So you disliked it when you were 17. Why?
Well, I'm struggling to remember now that you put it that way.
How convenient.
I think, I appreciated the things that Pyrotess and D-Lit brought to the table back then, if you will, but I think just the story, like, it felt really rote, and I wanted something more exciting, whereas now, I don't know, the fact that it sticks so closely to those fantasy conventions doesn't really bother me. I just am able to enjoy it more and don't really expect it to be more than what it is. Maybe it was overhyped for me back then.
Yeah, hype. I mean, hype can always like. You can have a show of any sort, live action, animation, Western, Eastern, however you want to put it, and hype can always ruin it for you because it might, on its own merits, be above average or good. But if someone comes up to you and says that it is literally the second coming of Christ, or it is like the equivalent of the invention of the ice cream cone, then you watch it and you don't feel like it meets up to those standards. You feel more disappointed than you otherwise would have been going in with an open mind. So, having had that time, you go back and you take a fresh perspective on it.
Totally. And it's weird, right? I mean, that sort of stuff shouldn't, right? I mean, if we just sort of were rational about this shit, it wouldn't affect us, but it does whenever people hype things. And then you just, it doesn't deliver, and you're just more disappointed than you should be.
I have that reaction to a show that I think uttering its name will probably call down the thunder on me, but I'm going to utter it anyway. And that show is, of course, Evangelion. I watched that.
It was hyped and you didn't like it?
I actually had both ends of the spectrum. I had basically seen a lot of opinion that said it was one of the worst things to blight anime ever, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, saying that it was one of the best animes ever made. It was very human, etc., etc., etc. So I watch it, and my reaction at the end of it is,
choose your words carefully. We could lose all listenership from here going forward. It all depends on you.
All right, okay. So no pressure. Thank you very kindly for that, Doc. Much appreciated. So, to offer my thoughts on it very briefly, I watched it. I thought some episodes were really good. I thought some episodes were terrible. And I thought the ending, and the Lord knows people are going to say, but what about End of Evangelion? I'm like, well, my point is this. This is what they presented to us. You don't get marks for handing in a better exam paper than the one you put in on the day. Sorry, but you don't. I don't see why they should get any different. But as I see it, some episodes were fantastic, some were not. Some characters were cool, some were not. And therefore it sits very much in the middle for me. I didn't regret my time with it, but I also thought I could have probably done some better things with my time instead of it. I sit in the middle.
All right, let's lay our cards on the table. What do you think of it, Forgalia?
Evangelion?
Yes.
I haven't watched it.
Warui Deshou, everyone.
And thank you very much for watching and listening to this podcast today.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I had the same experience with Twin Peaks. I'm like, X-Files,
okay.
Twin Peaks, is this an anime podcast? Oh my god.
Early 90s television.
Are we ticking off all the people we want to annoy today? All the fan groups?
Yeah, I had a similar experience with Twin Peaks, whereas everyone's like, watch this, it's Lynch, like, right? It's like very surreal, yeah. It's like, wow, surreal, yeah, cool. I like surreal stuff. And then I watch it, and the level of surreal was much different than what I was led to expect from all the hype. So I had mixed feelings about it, and I have yet to rewatch it to reconsider.
Again, expectations colouring your perceptions.
Yes, quite.
It's true. So I had, Shadon, your reaction initially to Evangelion. I think I was 19 when I watched it first. And I watched the English dub. And yeah, this is a show that I knew was polarizing, but more voices that were reaching me were in the pro-Eva camp. So I was expecting it to be amazing, and I was pretty let down, but I didn't want to be let down, so I just was like, trying to convince myself that it was good. And then I watched it with a friend of mine, and he was basically like, this is horseshit. What the fuck? And so it kind of shattered my, what I was holding on to. And I hated it for a while, but several years ago, I was hearing people talk about it. I kept hearing more and more kind of interesting discussions, and rewatching it in my 30s, I was blown away. I mean, it was. I'm now one of those people that thinks it's one of the greatest anime ever. And the ending included. I haven't watched the end of Evangelion movie, since I was a teenager, but just that TV show. I adore now. And once again, it's like the reset of our perceptions and perspectives, and we just kind of come to it with a different framework.
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw it, when I say relatively recent, it was within the past 2 years. Whether or not I would feel differently about it on a rewatch, I could not say. Maybe it might be worth experimenting on that at some point. I don't know. But fair enough.
Okay. Well, now that we have all caught up with each other and caught the listener up with our week, let's take a break. And you're listening to Warui Deshou. We'll be right back.
Every year, thousands of mecha pilots die in collision accidents. It cannot be proven that the Senpai Coast to Coast Mech Month podcast saved their lives. But it also cannot be disproven either. Listen to Senpai Coast to Coast Mech Month. And please, drive responsibly.
So you want to hear people talk about Japanese cartoons?
You know, anime.
But you think the other anime podcasters just aren't nerdy enough?
Sounds like you need to join forces with the Anime World Order.
Where each week 3 self-proclaimed experts offer you reviews
Of titles both new and classic, news and commentary.
Rants, convention reports, interviews with fandom.
and some hentai and yaoi for good measure.
So search for anime in the iTunes Music Store.
Or visit our website at animeworldorder.com.
Anime World Order, revealing the truth about anime, one podcast at a time.
どうしてあなたは私の前に現れたの？どうして私は私だなんて言ったの？どうしてあなたは私の何なのよ！
僕は君の何なんだろう。
生存戦略！悪いでしょう。
Welcome back to Warui Deshou, episode 0. Subtle Doctor here with Forgalia and Shadon. So, the reason that we wanted to title this particular episode, or number it rather, 0, rather than number 1, is we thought that before you invest too much time with us, it'd be good for you to know who you're getting in bed with, so to speak.
I thought it was just because we couldn't afford the 1.
Well, you're not supposed to say that out loud on the show.
I'm sorry.
So you're now fired. Forgalia, it's just me and you now.
It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Moving up in the world.
So, yeah, but like, just so that listeners can get an idea of who we are, and that there will be this reference point to go back to when we're several episodes down the road.
Yeah, so you'd know beforehand if Shadon likes to take his pants off or not.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Or if, you don't want to listen to the words of a filthy Monogatari fan like myself, you can know immediately, hey, I'm out. So let's sort of talk about who we are as anime fans, because this is ostensibly an anime podcast. Shadon, how did you become an anime fan?
I think the best way for me to describe it is simply, for the longest time, I've always been a fan of science fiction, even as a kid. I mean, the defining show of my childhood, I mean, everyone has a show or a film that defined their childhood and probably helped form their mindset as they grew up. For me, it was Thunderbirds, and I still love that show. But that basic...
Oh my god.
Yes.
Thunderbirds.
Thank you. No, that's so cool.
Yeah, basically, I watched that as a kid, and even though I didn't really get it, I thought it was really cool, it's technology and stuff like that. So, growing up, I always had a fondness for sci-fi, and that eventually blossomed into me liking other films, sci-fi shows, cartoons, things like that. And when I moved out to university, I had a couple of friends who watched anime at the time, and they were always mentioning certain properties, or I'd see certain things like when I was going out shopping at, say, HMV or, wherever, and I always thought to myself, well, I might as well give it a shot at some point. So I eventually got into watching anime by picking up, and, well, here comes one of the holy grails, Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Film number, the first film. Because that had kind of an overlap in my mindset. I was very fascinated by science fiction, particularly the works of Philip K. Dick. And if you've read any of his stuff, which I, funnily enough, mentioned before when I was referring to Fallout, there's a bit of overlap there, about, consciousness. Can machines possess souls? Can human souls be transferred into machines and retain their, full form? So that was basically my gateway. That was my entry point into anime, as it were. And since then, I've watched more series. I initially started out by doing a kind of lucky dip approach in that, apart from some recommendations, I went into HMV and just picked out shows randomly based on what I thought looks appealing from, back of the box blurbs. Incredibly naive approach, admittedly, as I'll no doubt relate to soon enough. But yeah, that's essentially how I got started. It just kind of crossed over from that point where I thought, I'm enjoying all this science fiction material that's live action or Western animation, but what else is there out there? And so then I picked up Ghost in the Shell, watched that, thought it was amazing, still think it's great, admittedly very dry in places, but different story for different time.
Oh, it's so good. I love it. I have to ask, is this, so when you got into it, was this pre-internet for you?
This was pretty much pre-internet. This was before the point that I even really became part of the community I'm with now, which is the fighting game community, which, of course, by its nature, has a bit of overlap with the anime community as well. Fighting game fans like to watch anime, or at least some of them do. There's inevitably an overlap, and that's where I've eventually come across a lot of shows that have been recommended to me. But back in the day, that was very much... It wasn't so much pre-internet as it was me being ignorant of how to obtain them through the internet, illegal or otherwise. So I just purchased them legitimately on DVD, whether might have been available in the store.
Well, very good. So, what did you move on to anything that cemented you in the fandom, or was Ghost in the Shell, did that just hook you forever?
Well, I did purchase more Ghost in the Shell stuff. The second film, also the OVAs of the standalone Complex series, particularly, in fact, I had all three of them, which I think was Laughing Man, Individual 11, and Standalone Complex. All very good. But after that point, I started diverging. So I picked up some other seminal classics, one of which, of course, was Cowboy Bebop.
Excellent, yep,
but that's kind of standard and expected at this point. Christ, if I'd said I'd not watched that, I think I'd probably be booed off. People be throwing vegetables at the monitor.
It's the show that even people that hate anime love.
Very true, very true. Then it diverged from there, so I started watching some stuff that was not necessarily sci-fi related.
Mm-hmm.
Off the top of my head, and maybe this is getting ahead of myself, but one of my favourite, if not my favourite anime show of all time, which I watched, which is no sci-fi in it whatsoever, is Welcome to the NHK.
Ah, okay. So I know kind of the deal with this one, but I've not seen it.
Okay. To explain, there is a concept, I suppose you could call this. It is based in Japan, but it's really more of a universal thing, and more of a universal social construct. It just has this Japanese name for it called Hikikomori. And I apologise to anyone who might watch it if I absolutely mangled the holy language of glorious Nippon. It's called Hikikomori. And essentially it's a phenomenon where it's about socially shut-in people who refuse contact with the outside world. They don't work, they're unproductive, they shy away from contacts of any description. They'll typically just be usually very young, well, I say very young, I mean young adults, usually living in apartments paid for by their parents. If they're not doing that, then they must have some other source of income that's not from themselves, essentially. They're just essentially socially inward, and that's usually due to a number of reasons. Rough time in school is often one of them. Unrealistic expectations from parents. I mean, Japan in particular has a very, very high standard set on its kids for as far as educational standards go. In the case of Welcome to NHK, it is somehow, and I have absolutely no idea how it manages to accomplish this, but it does it. It is somehow a comedy about Hikikomori that is sympathetic to its main character, who is one of the Hikikomori. That's one of the pitfalls of making a show about this that is a comedy, and yet is also about a subject matter that can to be quite frank, touch a little close to the home for some people. I know it did with me, definitely. I mean, I myself am socially active. I do go out. I meet people, but I see shades of myself in the main character Sato, and like how I could potentially have ended up like him. But at the same time, it's a comedy, but it's not at the expense of the main character, which is very unusual. I mean, you take, for example, like a lot of American comedies, like, dare I mention the atrocity that is Paul Blart. Yeah, I can't believe I brought that up. That was literally... I feel a little sick right now. But yeah, to use that as an example, in that particular film and its sequel, Paul Blart is mocked. He's not... It's a comedy, but it's a comedy at the expense of him. And that's not a good comedy. It's not a good film. It's not a likeable film. You can't like that film on that basis, because it's essentially mockery of an individual. Now, it's a bit of an apples and oranges thing, but I suppose Paul Blart's problem in those films was that he was perhaps overweight and a bit of a goofball. But in Welcome to HK, Sato's problem is that he's completely socially shut in. And mocking someone for that is a horrible thing to do. But the show definitely avoids all of that, and it's actually legitimately laugh out loud funny. We laugh at what the stupid stuff that Sato does to try and make money, like becoming a gold seller in an MMO. He does actually try that. It's absolutely hilarious. It's hilarious, but it's not at the expense of him. The actual overarching plot of the show is that he meets a young woman who tries to help him through his problems through her own method of psychotherapy, which she's basically learning just from reading from books, pretty much. And during the show, he meets up with a couple of people he knew in school who have now, of course, grown up. One of them being a very nerdy friend who he develops a dating sim with,
Superman.
of all things.
Superman was boring.
And on top of that,
Superman was boring,
he also meets up
that's
with a
why
girl
they
who was like the popular girl in the school and how she's now coping with life afterwards.
They tried to make him not boring by making him vulnerable to stuff.
And it's an overarching plot essentially about him coming to terms with himself and eventually not being a hikikomori anymore, but at the same time being proud of the things that he is capable of. He, for example, turns out to be a fairly decent writer. He has a decent heart about him as well. It was such a wonderful show because it was incredibly funny. I was laughing my pants off at various parts of it, all the way through. Like some of Sato's mental images about how his kitchen appliances seem to mock him, and they have very cartoonish, Muppet-like appearances. It was such a wonderful, wonderful show. I would not hesitate to recommend it to anyone who even doesn't watch anime, just because if you're willing to give the subject matter a chance and not, look down on Sato as like a complete waste of oxygen. If you actually follow the show's intended idea of sympathizing with him, I think it's wonderful. Fantastic comedy, very touching as well, and great ending also, surprisingly. Well, actually, I did have some issues with the ending, but overall, I felt very satisfied watching it. So yeah, that is one of my... No, that is the best anime I have seen thus far in my life. No. So not to say that there are not necessarily ones that are bad, but as far as the cadre I've seen so far, that definitely ranks top.
Okay, so this show sort of moved you from the kind of older sci-fi stuff to more contemporary, for lack of a better word, kind of otaku-aimed shows. It's
slice of life, I'd say.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, because the sci-fi stuff I usually watch for the concepts, like, they see this fantastic technology being employed firsthand. But as time went on, I realised what I liked more as an adult was character-driven stuff. And often the thing about sci-fi is that the sci-fi, despite a lot of people seeming missing the point, especially writers of sci-fi in TV and whatnot, sci-fi is very easy to write character-driven stuff, because usually the idea behind sci-fi is not that you create a crazy technology as a writer, but rather that it's about how the technology affects the people. There is, for example, a hard-boiled film noir detective novel called Altered Carbon by Richard Morgan, which I've read. And the idea of that, essentially, is that people can download their minds in and out of bodies
I don't feel like
freely.
That's a focus. I feel like that's
and it results in a lot of changes to the way the world works. And there's instances there of how it affects the characters. Like the main character, for example, is in the entire plot of that story is using a body that's not his own. So you never actually know what he physically looks like.
The struggles of Saitama
and that's how it affects him as a person.
You are giving me ideas for what to recommend that we watch. In both NHK and Altered Carbon, your descriptions of them have call to mind immediately, anime that I think are quite good and have many
someone
similarities to this
punching something
stuff.
in the
So you're giving us good fodder,
Yeah.
I think, to go over later.
Oh, thank God, I can finally cash my paycheck with a clear conscience.
Woohoo!
Well, hey, but that, basically, I love good character and stuff. That being said, I'm also not adverse to good action as well. The most recent thing I have been watching, apart from Ruby, which in itself is quite heavily action-oriented, but as far as actually from out of
Post-production,
Japan,
audio effects.
is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stardust Crusaders.
Oh, good show. Very good show.
Very, very sure. The thing about JoJo's is that there isn't a lot of character stuff in it. There are certainly bits, Polnareff and his sister, but they're brief.
Yes.
They're very brief, they're unintrusive, and if you ask me to define the characteristics of the characters, like, say, define Jotaro, his personality, I would probably have maybe 2 sentences to say to you. But that's not what the show is about.
Those characters are, so much of them is put into their outward appearances, right? They're sort of defined by their style.
Absolutely. It's very style over substance, but I'm okay with style on its own. It doesn't necessarily all have to be substance with me. The ideal one for me is one that comprises both. Again, going back to Welcome to HK, which had the visual style to it plus the imagery that I mentioned. But Stardust Crusaders is all style. No real mincing of words on that one. But it's style that is executed very competently, and that's the most important thing about it. I don't mind action as long as it's not idiotic. That's basically what it boils down to.
Okay.
And saying it's what defines idiotic action versus what is not is kind of nebulous, because there's loads and loads of things you can say that make it stupid or not. But I think that it's very internally consistent with its logic, even if it has some stuff like pervy monkey and giant boat.
That's right.
Because giant pervy monkey and boat.
I forgot about him.
That's what he was doing. He was perving on the girl.
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah, broadly speaking, as far as what I like in anime at the moment, I think it's basically what I like in any sort of medium. It can either be very well written, character-driven stuff, or it can be very good, action without substance, as long as it's created intelligently. Like, for example, one of my favourite action movies of all time is Die Hard, which I will be watching this Christmas because it is the best Christmas movie ever made.
Sure.
Yeah, but there was a comment made by Mike of Red Letter Media in the review that he did of Die Hard 5 that the original Die Hard was not a smart film, but it was a smartly made one. Right. And I think that perfectly encapsulates what I want in basically any sort of medium or fiction I take in. It doesn't have to be smart, it helps if it is, but if it's smartly made, you've got me on board.
Well, that's a really tidy way to put that. I'm going to steal it from you because I like it. I think it's indicative of a lot of the entertainment that I like. So you mentioned your description of action shows you like has got me wondering, what do you not like? Like, what do you see as incompetently made? Like, what's the show that you've seen maybe that you think a lot of people do like that you just think is trash? Let's make some people mad. Let's make some people mad, shall we? Well, that's tough because there are... dear, oh dear. You kind of put me on the spot here. as far as what I say, hey, because the funny thing is I actually have a Mal page which I'm currently looking through to remind myself of my previous opinions on stuff. And yeah, because it's been a while, since I watched some of these shows. I'm just trying to remember what I thought of it. We love Mal on Warui Deshou. We're very pro Mal. We're very pro Mal, yes, that we are. Well, I think that a couple of examples I could give maybe not necessarily from shows I've seen, but just on principle. You need to firstly have in action a protagonist who has some sort of vulnerability to him. If I'm watching a show where a guy is just basically cleaving through enemies with ill abandon and he's not struggling or showing any sort of difficulty in handling it, it's boring. It's just completely dull and uninteresting. There needs to be tension to the fights. But there's One Punch Man that executes this concept perfectly. Yes, I was just thinking that. I've not actually seen that, but the funny thing that you mentioned is I know of the concepts of it, and it relates actually, funnily enough, to another character who can be quite boring if executed incompetently. Superman. Of all people. Superman was boring. Superman was boring, and that's why they made Kryptonite grow on trees. They tried to make him not boring by making him vulnerable to stuff. I was just thinking about Kenshiro, actually.
Well, let me offer a counterpoint to that to answer Doc's question here about how it works. Again, I'm using Superman here rather than something from anime, but point it still applies because Superman is boring when you challenge the super part of him. If you challenge the man part of him, that's when things are good. That's when things are interesting in my mind. That's also why the first two Richard Donner movies works, because they weren't necessarily about him overcoming an obstacle by punching it to death. They were about him using his head, and about how he was eventually, challenged on levels other than his power. Going back to what you said about One Punch Man, while I have not seen the show yet, from what I understand of its concept, it's not about, him having ridiculous fights. I mean, they're a part of it, but they're about him, basically being disgruntled with people not accepting, his status and...
Kinda. One Punch Man is a gag show, basically.
Gag show, that's it, yeah. It plays the concept for comedy. So that's why that works.
I think on a certain level, it is a gag show. I mean, It has very strong gags.
Yeah.
But I think it also manages to, through the support characters, actually function as like a competent shonen action show. Because they're not sort of all-powerful gods. I mean, they're very powerful, but they have their struggles and their character flaws. And what you were saying about Saitama, the main character, is very accurate. I think kind of the fun of it is you see, at least in the beginning of it, you see his kind of ennui with life and his sort of, boredom with his existence. He's gotten to the pinnacle. What's there to do? So he sort of joins on a lark, the sort of established structure for superheroes. There's like an official association. And he's clearly the strongest person on the planet, right? I mean, he's clearly the best and brightest, but the measurement system within the structure is not calibrated to recognize his talent. So you've got this genius being kind of held down unfairly, they forced to do menial tasks and make quotas. And in a way, I think it's actually pretty political if you kind of start looking for that stuff. But you can also just enjoy like the stupid expressions Saitama makes.
I don't feel like that's a focus. I feel like that's just a vehicle for what the supporting characters get to do, and just how Saitama gets to relieve all tension and stuff. What he does. I don't think the struggles of Saitama being the greatest is like a main focus, because he doesn't care. You get to see him interact with the other characters, and yeah, I do agree. The rest of the characters are what makes it more deep than just someone punching something and dying.
Genos is great.
To return to what you said, Doc, you mentioned about a show that people like that I actually hate. And I've just reminded myself of it, and I think the fact that it took some time for me to remember probably tells you more than you need to know about it. But let's name drop another show, Sword Art Online.
Boom. Pow! Up in your grill.
There's the headshot. There's the nuke.
Post-production, audio effects.
That's right.
I hate this show with an absolute fiery burning passion. I think it is the most pandering, worthless waste of potential I've seen in years. I won't mince words about it. I've only watched 8 episodes out of the first season, and that's because I've been dreading actually trying to finish it. I mean, when I watch something that's awful, I will at least try to finish it so I can watch the whole thing and then, have the complete experience. Even if that is admittedly like, decide, I've just cut off one, so I might as well get the rest of them. But here's the thing about Sword Art Online. People love the show, or at least a lot of people do. And I don't disrespect their desires to like that show. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. For me, my big problems with that are, A, it's a waste of a potentially interesting concept. You have people trapped in this virtual reality land, and they can die in it. It's like the Matrix, die in there, you die in the real world. And, it could be about the politics that form, like how things gradually deteriorate as time goes on. There's no immediate escape route. I mean, there's the concept of the guys trying to clear out the dungeon to escape, and yet for some reason the show is not the focus of that, even though that's the overarching story and the driving force behind the plot.
So what is the focus? What does the show focus on?
Or rather, who does the show focus on, shall I say?
Oh, is it romance between main character and stuff?
No.
Is it...
There's a phrase that I think may or may not be applicable to this show, and it's called the Gary Stew. Kiriso is completely without flaw. Like, he's perfect in this world. He's a badass. All the women love him. It essentially feels to me like a ploy for people for people watching it to relate, because they might themselves think, "Oh, I'm only a video gamer, but in this world, I can be amazing to everyone."
He's very much a self-insert character, and
you got it. You were in a nutshell.
He's not necessarily walking around exuding power, but any obstacle that gets in his way, he has just enough kind of capability to overcome it. And it's annoying, and all the ladies want to bone him, even his sister, especially his sister.
Yes. I mean, going back to what I said before about, action, like, there's no tension in any of the fights because he doesn't show any signs of being concerned or alarmed or thinking it might be over his head. He just rolls for it, cool as a cucumber, and apparently that makes him a badass. But, I mean, to return back to the Die Hard example, in that film, John McClane gets injured quite badly in a lot of situations he's in. I mean, we all remember the scene where he walks through the glass. He's vulnerable. Kirito he's immortal as far as I'm concerned. He doesn't come across as anything other than a godlike presence because the plot says so. Everyone bandies around the phrase plot armor, and there it is. But I remember one particular moment from that show that really, really angered me, and it was about the character design. Now, I might be wrong with her name, but I think it's Asuka or Asuka? I can't remember. She's the blacksmith lady.
I'm unwilling to check at the moment, so let's go with that.
I'm unwilling to check ever, to be quite honest, so let's keep this rolling. Right, there's an episode where Kirito gets a sword forged from Dragon Poo. That was the one thing that made me smile watching this show, apart from when I turned it off. Now, the thing that really peeved me off about this is that she looks like she works in a bakery. She's wearing, like, some sort of, like, bakery dress outfit.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep. And this immediately made me hostile to it. I mean, I was already angry with it anyway, but it actually made me outright hate it, because I realised then that they were not designing the characters to fit the world that they were in. They were designing them to pander. And pandering really, really insults me. Not necessarily on a personal level, but I just feel assaulted by proxy by it. I mean, this is a woman who should be wearing, like, she looks like she'd be covered in soot, working the forge, looking dirty, filthy, not. But no, she's completely pristine and looks like she should be making pastry.
Well, it is an MMO. It's kind of accurate.
Not really, I'd say.
Oh, like designing your own characters and outfits?
Well, there is that.
Kind.
There is that, but
unreasonable outfits. Like, if you played Terra, for instance, everything looks ridiculous. Like, but I guess that's MMO stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it bothered me a lot. I think it has some kind of gross treatment of women if you kind of extrapolate from what's happening.
It's not even that bothered me. It just, to me, exposed the shallowness of the construction of both characters and the story itself. It's not
It is pretty shallow.
And I thought, great, fantastic. Sure, some people will like to look at it, but, can we have something that at least feels a bit more plausible, a bit more grounded? I mean, granted, I'm speaking about a show here where it's inexplicably possible for people to survive, just on drip feeds in a coma for 3+ years or however long that goes on.
Well, Vorgalia, why don't we throw over to you and talk about your kind of origin story in anime fandom?
Oh. Yeah. Well, I guess the first anime I had experience with was Yu-Gi-Oh! On TV.
I have never seen Yu-Gi-Oh!
That was the I don't know, that was in tune with the sort of more casual cartoons on TV, so I didn't really consider it anything special or as an anime or something.
That's interesting that you say that, because in the programming blocks for kids' TV, when I was growing up, they started slipping in things like, Pokemon and whatnot, and Yu-Gi-Oh! As you rightly point out.
Yeah, Pokemon.
Also Digimon. Yeah. But this was amongst more Western animation and other, live-action kids shows. They were in the same block, so they were included, even though they were, technically anime. And I think I see what you mean, that might have served as a gateway for a lot of people. Because, you watch one show as a kid when you're in that block.
It wasn't a gateway for me. That's what I'm saying. I just treated it
well, let me discard that
an
theory.
Average cartoon. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Teen Titans, same thing. Whatever. It's all the same. But yeah, that was my first contact with anime, but I didn't really consider it anime. My first real contact with anime was me sitting in front of the TV at 5 in the afternoon. I switched to a channel, an obscure channel that was playing Rurouni Kenshin.
Yay!
And I watched it, I watched like a couple of episodes, and I'm like, well, okay, this is mature and deep and stuff. What is this? I got hooked.
What do you remember? What part of Kenshin that you saw?
No.
Okay,
we can move on.
I'm gonna watch it again.
It's funny.
One of these days, actually.
It's funny that you mentioned how you were channel hopping there, because I have memories of prior to the stuff I discussed about Ghost in the Shell, where I was just flicking through channels one time, usually on Friday nights when my parents would be out and I would have the house to myself, so I had access to the Skybox, and I remember coming across on MTV, of all things, Aeon Flux. Only one episode, mind you, and also it was on MTV, which seems very bizarre given the state of that channel today. And then I watched it and I thought, okay, cool, I don't get it. Moving on. It was admittedly an episode in the middle of the series, completely out of context. I had no idea what was going on, so I can't blame the show for that. Another show that I did watch, funnily enough, that did leave an impression on me was one I caught on Toonami one time when I was trying to find reruns of Megas XLR. Was one of the Gundam shows. I can't remember which one it was.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess it was Wing.
Quite possibly. All I remember from that episode, and it sticks with me just as how amusing it was there was a guy ranting about how his AI-controlled mobile dolls, I think they were like so impossibly overpowered that no one could beat them. And in the very same episode, using a Gundam that had no working range weapons whatsoever, the lead character made mincemeat out of them, and I thought, okay, back to the drawing board we go.
Yes, that was Gundam Wing. Now you've crystallized, you solidified it.
That is the one episode of Gundam I've seen in my entire life.
Oh, we're gonna have to change that over the course of this.
My education begins here.
I'm just awkwardly laughing in the background because I haven't.
Oh, it's fine. It's not for everyone, but actually, so I should back up and say so there's this sort of mythical idea of what people think Gundam is, that it's all kind of the same thing, but actually it's so much different shit that there's kind of a Gundam show for most people, and I'm gonna try and see if I can get you guys to get into one of the shorter ones.
Well, to ask the obvious question, Vargelia, do you like guns? Then you should give a damn.
No.
And there goes all our viewership.
Okay.
I'm firing you again the second time.
Great, I got fired twice over. I didn't realise I was possibly firing the same job twice, but I must be doing something wrong.
So wrong that it's right. Much like that's the ethos of this show, I think. But Vorgelia, okay, so you saw Kenshin and you thought, well, this is really different.
Yeah, this is really different. It introduced me to a bunch of anime tropes that were really new to me at the time and felt really stylized and kind of romantic in a way. And it was so different, and I got hooked, and but eventually stopped watching it. And this was before the internets. So it kind of stayed with me for a while until I went on the internet and discovered the entire anime thing by just looking for Kenshin on Google and saying, oh, yeah, I watched that thing a while back. Let's see what it is. That was cool. After that, I didn't watch a lot of anime, even though I rediscovered it. I watched Kenshin when I was 12, and then I got internet when I was 16 or 15 or something, and then at some point I watched the first 2 seasons of Lupin the Third for some reason, which
man, wow, that's a classy choice.
The second season is 170 episodes or something. So.
It is. Yes. Part 1 only 23. Part 2 176.
Yeah. I was going to ask that. I mean, I want to be a fly on the wall in that boardroom meeting where they said, right, the first season was fantastic, and let's go make a second one. How many episodes do you want, boss? 170 plus.
107, and with ever reducing quality.
Not surprising, given that many episodes for a single season.
Yeah, the writers kind of ran out of ideas.
How can you run out of ideas in a show that's got 170 plus episodes this season?
Exactly.
Well, I think too, the first season.
The first season is really tight.
Yes, and little name that our audience may or may not know, Hayao Miyazaki. He worked on season 1 of that show, and then the film Castle of Cagliostro. But I don't think he worked on the second part much, if at all. So it's tonally, it's pretty different, and it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that it lost steam for you. It is a long show, and it's episodic, and it's all kind of, here's another caper, and I think it functions pretty well today as like a yearly TV special. You get one a year, it's an hour, 90 minutes, that's it.
But yeah, I watched that, and I'm still not into anime.
Still not there yet.
But at some point, I discovered the Cowboy Bebop movie.
Yeah, you did.
The movie first.
I didn't watch the movie. I watched like the first 5 minutes where it's on the convenience store and like Spike shoots some guy and I'm like, wow, that is so cool. I have to wonder because I'm like 16.
I have to wonder if that bit for the convenience store actually was meant to be a recreation of the robbery from RoboCop, because you know how Cowboy Bebop loves to reference its films and its. It does.
Yeah. It does. I'm not familiar enough with the RoboCop to neither to confirm or deny that, but it wouldn't surprise me because Shinichiro Watanabe, kind of the main mind behind Bebop, he loves his 80s, 90s American pop culture.
I will say this, RoboCop is definitely worth a watch, but then if anyone tells you should watch any of the films after that with the exception of 2, hit them in the face.
Duly noted.
2 years passed since I watched the first 5 minutes of Cowboy Bebop.
Oh my god.
2 years. This sounds like the skit of a Lifetime movie.
Such a protracted saga.
My anime experience is so sporadic. It's like 2 years passed, and I'm like, okay, I watched the first 5 minutes of Cowboy Bebop. Let's give the show a go. And I watched the show, and that's when everything started. Like, I loved the show for like being slice of life, sort of, and then with the fighting choreography being as fluid as it is, I got obsessed with the Shinichiro Watanabe director.
Mm-hmm.
So then I watched Champloo, and I watched a bunch of stuff. And that's how it all started, I guess.
Excellent. So, since Shadon already kind of went into this, why don't you talk about like some of your favorite shows? Would they be the Watanabe works? Would you still consider them your favorite?
Some of my Cowboy Bebop is everyone's favorite thing. Champloo is very good.
My wife and I are watching Champloo at the minute.
Oh, very good.
I see.
I've seen it myself as well. I really did enjoy that.
Oh, it's so good. This is a rewatch. I watched it as it was airing in 2004, and I haven't really seen it since then. Wow. So this is like, a decade later revisit.
Something more recent, Darker Than Black, for its world building.
Good old Darker Than Black.
World building kind of clicked with me very well, and the action was great, very fluid again, which is something I like. Music was great.
That scene, the music is spectacular. It has the most memorable moment. I just have to mention this. I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but the most memorable moment in Darker Than Black, and I have this annotated in my anime list as well. The scene where the main hero, I forget his name. Where he accesses his own defibrillator. I think that's just amazing. So he has the power of electricity, folks, and at one point someone makes his heart stop, and as he's falling, he falls onto his hand, which defibrillates his heart back to beating again. And
he has the power to
so good.
Manipulate free electrons. It's electricity, but it's used for quite more than that, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
But he zaps things real good.
What?
He zaps things real good.
Yeah.
I think we can agree on that.
And then he has to eat a large plate of noodles.
No, he doesn't have one of those.
Yes, I know what you're referring to.
His bargain or whatever he must eat.
Bargain. He doesn't have one of those.
He doesn't have one?
No,
I thought he had
I'd argue.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't because of spoilers. Can I spoil?
Sure. I mean, well. No, man, so I've seen both seasons, yeah. But I guess I just forgot like a bit of it.
Yeah, he doesn't have one because, like I said, it's electron manipulation. So his sister originally had this power. He didn't have powers. So his sister manipulated his electrons to give him the power as she was dying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he wasn't made. He wasn't like a contractor made by the gate. His sister gave him the power.
Oh, God, okay.
So he doesn't have a bargain.
Okay. Well, it's been like probably 5 or 6 years. So yeah, I guess my memory is shit. So I will often forget the key details such as this. So get ready for that, folks.
Yeah.
Oh no! When the wiki page of this podcast comes up, there's going to be a section dedicated to what you've forgotten or ever missed.
I predict where you will have like a corrections and hate mail section.
It's like I've only mentioned shonen so far, so my next picks might be surprising, but I like slice of life and cute stuff. So like, Kimi ni Todoke was amazing. Definitely one of my favorites. Bakemonogatari is amazing. Definitely one of my favorites. What was it? Kuragehime was great. I'll settle for that, I guess.
Yeah, we don't want to give too much away, but just a nice vertical slice for the people. All right, so I guess I will briefly go into how I got into this thing that I believe I've already mentioned, that I started when I was 14. So I grew up in the Deep South, and one cold autumn day, my stepfather and younger brother went out hunting, and did
they catch a prize anime and bring it back for you?
That's not the direction this story goes, but it would be way more interesting.
It's a wild rabbit that you named Kirito, and then later realized, oh my god, it's an anime character.
I shall be a right good cowboy, bebop son.
They captured one of the wild boar from Princess Mononoke, and what actually happened was I was like, no thank you go do that stuff and I'll stay here. And I was flipping the channels, and isn't that, all our stories involve flipping channels. Remember when kids used to watch TV? What a wholesome era that we grew up in. But no,
yeah, now we have the internet. Now we have choice.
Now there's little of that serendipity and spontaneity in viewing, but I happened to change to the Cartoon Network during their Toonami blog.
Good old Tsunami.
When Dragon Ball Z was on. And it was the first season, I believe. Nappa was fighting the good guys. Goku had yet to arrive. And something about the fighting and kind of the music and the gravitas just really captivated me. And I started taping the show every day. I got really pissed whenever...
Taping shows?
That's right, yes.
We said before about how kids don't know what floppy disks are. At this point, VHS...
The old fogey show. But, so I got super into that. And at some point, their episodes available in English, went away. And it was about 50 episodes I think Cartoon Network had. And I was so mad that the storyline wasn't continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the library and started to read about it and, saw like, oh shit, this goes some crazy places. And I found out it was anime. So I started to kind of look into that a little bit, and Gundam Wing came on pretty soon after I started watching Toonami, and I ate that up. I've since kind of disavowed my love for that show, but back then, when you're 15 and you've seen one anime previously, it seems pretty good.
Yeah, and you'll take anything at that point, pretty much, because it's from that place. You've just not yet developed a taste for certain things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first I did watch was like Black Bullet. Everyone hated that except me, because I hadn't seen anything like it.
Oh wow, that's kind of a recent show, right?
It is.
I've not. So it's based on a light novel, Dengeki light novel, right?
Light novel. Yeah.
Okay, and one of the characters is in DFC, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Lentaloku.
Which one is she? Please refresh me, because I've not seen the show.
Lentaloku. It's the guy that punches. He has metal arms and he punches.
So he's Jax from Killer Instinct.
Yes. No, he's Jax from Star Wars.
Excuse me, Shadon. Jax is from Mortal Kombat. Thank you very much.
Oh no. Am I fired again?
No, that wasn't me. That was the spirit of our listeners.
All right.
He's Raiden from Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yes. Yes, he is.
God damn it.
I'm sure that actually exists as a Mugen game somewhere.
Oh my god.
I hope so.
If you look for like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 PC version, there's a Mugen game called that. You should look into it. I'm sure your taste in fighting games will.
I'm not sure what you're quite implying there, Vaughn. But I will take your comments on board and review them with all due haste at some point.
PC2 PC. All right, scribbled it down. All right. Well, from there, I should I guess tell a story of. So I got my brother into Dragon Ball as well, and we were out at the mall. He had a Dragon Ball Z t-shirt on, and some girl, like, so I was probably 16 at the time. I'm guessing she was a college student, but some young woman kind of approached us because my brother had a Dragon Ball shirt on and was like, "Yo, Dragon Ball," and I was like, "Yeah, we love DBZ. We really like anime." And she's like,
wow, "This is just like the plot of the Dragon Ball movie."
I'm sure I've had this conversation before, but just replace Dragon Ball with any anime I've ever mentioned in my entire life.
Well, so she says, "Oh, Dragon Ball's not anime. Let me tell you about the real animation."
And can I just say, Doc, that the way that she made that sound made it sound like if you replaced real anime, you could have put in real cocaine or real, hard drugs of any name, and you wouldn't have to change the tone or anything.
Let me tell you about that real Molly shit.
So, while you were getting your black market anime,
well, she says, "I watch Saturday morning Sci-Fi Channel anime. They show for real anime."
Oh, the Sci-Fi Channel. Oh my god.
And so I start watching it, and some of the stuff is okay. I liked Iria Zerum, the animation. I liked the first Tenchi Muyo movie okay. It had some neat fights. But then they would also show shit like Odin, Space, Photon, Starlight. Well, I forget the fucking subtitle, but that is a goddamn atrocity of a film. And
is that all one title, or is it like 3 different shows?
No,
Odin, Starlight, something.
It is a single film. I'm gonna
Odin, Starlight, Mutiny.
It sounds like a terrible brand of cologne.
Yeah, Odin, Starlight, Mutiny, also known as Odin, Photon, Space Sailor, Starlight. I was correct. I wasn't just misremembering. So yeah, she talked about this as one of the good things on Sci-Fi Channel. So if you're listening out there, lady, let me just tell you now, your tastes are garbage. I hope they've evolved, because that movie is fucking terrible.
You could really have upset her now by saying that. She could be there listening to this podcast, drinking a bottle of whiskey, regretting her life choices, and now you've just took the knife, stuck it in, and twisted it for all it's worth. I hope you're happy, Doc.
Yeah, I bet you introduced yourself to her as the subtle doctor when you were 16, and she remembers that. What was that cute person that I told about Sci-Fi Channel?
I hadn't thought of that as a screen name at that point. Unfortunately, I was unacquainted with the charms of medieval philosophy.
Yeah. He was only sus at that point. He hadn't yet earned his PhD.
It's true. I still haven't got that PhD to this day.
So it's an honorary doctorate then.
That's right. It's a 2 master's degrees. That's enough now. Thanks, doctorate.
Wow.
I don't no more school, please God. But from there, my kind of anime journey dovetails with Shadon's. I started kind of buying things based on like character design and description on the back of the box. Like, did it look appealing? And it was kind of a crapshoot. Sometimes I'd like things okay, sometimes I'd be disappointed. Didn't find anything particularly great until I met up with a good friend who introduced me to a lot of good stuff. And then I got the internet at home. So my kind of knowledge started to expand. But I didn't really become the kind of anime fan I am today, which is to say super obsessive, until kind of 2009. It was after I withdrew from school for some personal reasons and I had a lot more time. I thought, well, hey, this anime thing, I haven't done it in a couple years because grad school, I had no life. Let me give this another shot. And I watched a show called Eureka 7, and it got me all the way back in, and I discovered podcasts and started to choose shows on based on who worked on them rather than just sort of the look of the show. Got more familiar with certain genres like old robot shows. I wouldn't say that my knowledge rises to the level of someone like Mike Toole or Mike Dent, but those are, by the way, famous anime personalities that know a ton of shit about robot shows. I don't know as much as those guys, but I've seen a fair few. I guess if I had to pick my favorite shows, a lot of them would be mecha shows. Like, I'm a really big fan of the Macross franchise.
I've actually watched only the Macross. Was it Macross Gold? The movie? Which one? What was it called again? The one that everyone really loves.
The 80s film?
I think that might have been it, yes.
Do You Remember Love?
Is that the one?
That's the... So there's the original Super Dimensional Fortress Macross TV show.
I watched Macross Frontier. The
that one's singing. So... Oh, I love Macross Frontier. I love Macross Frontier.
It's pretty good.
It's so fucking good.
It's pretty. It's so decultural.
It is. Yes, it's right. It is so deculture. Have you seen the Macross Frontier movies though, Forgalia?
The movie, just one movie that's called Macross Frontier. That's all I've watched.
Well, there's two. So there's I forget what the first one's called. But the second Macross Frontier movie is called The Wings of Goodbye. It's meant to be 2 films as a compilation of the TV show, and they retell the story. And I actually think the films, as much as I like the show, I enjoy the films more. For Frontier, they're fantastic. But I'm one of the I pretty much love the only Macross thing I don't like very much is Macross 0, which was like a CG thing that I didn't really care for. Oh, and Macross 2. That one's been written out of the canon by the Macross people themselves. They kind of knew they fucked up that one.
If only some other franchise directors had the good graces to admit what they'd done previously was a bit shit. I'd still have hair. But no, they don't do that for me, so thank you very much. You know who you are. I'm bald now. Thanks.
Oh, rip Shadon's hair.
So much for just for men.
I'm pouring one out for you. But I have been getting into Monogatari. Forgalia mentioned Bakemonogatari. I've been watching through that kind of enormous franchise. And I also like, you guys mentioned some slice of life things. I like that there's not really a genre of anime that I won't give a chance. There's plenty that I like, and I like, romance stuff like Toradora. I like, big sprawling science fiction stuff like Legend of the Galactic Heroes is probably my favorite anime. And then you have the super robot stuff like Gao Gaigar. More kind of philosophical fare like Evangelion. I like a whole bunch of stuff.
You have a varied anime diet.
It's true.
You've got all of the anime food groups.
I try. I try. And it's because in the early days of my fandom, and even kind of the second big chapter of it, the early days of those, I limited my viewing choices. Kind of, I guess, some of the big voices in the fandom, I really kind of took their opinions as gospel. When they said things like, fuck KyoAni, or like moe shit, or these otaku shows are garbage. It was like, fuck that shit.
Speaking for me personally, I think I can agree in that for the longest time it can be difficult to come to the right conclusion. I think that no genre in of itself is innately bad. With maybe, unless you get into some really, really nasty stuff, but then that's just deliberately offensive.
Yes.
But that's a very different tangent I don't want to go down because I would like to sleep tonight. Anyway, my point basically is, like I said earlier, and I think you would probably feel the same, both of you, is that genres themselves are only really like the flavors. To make a metaphor, anyone can make vanilla ice cream, but not everyone can make vanilla ice cream taste great. So it's really a question of what flavor do I want, and then what is good. Which ones are the best ones? For me, all I ask is that it be good, and admittedly that's very nebulous, but that's the standard I run by. I can watch pretty much any genre, and as long as it's good, again, not going into detail on the standards that I'm setting myself here, I can get behind it.
Can I just say, you were the fucking metaphor architect. I love it. You have just like a gamut of analogies like in your back pocket that you pull out. So good.
I've been working on it in the front of the mirror for a very, very long time.
Yeah, he's been playing Max Payne like over and over.
Hey, I reckon
absorbing all of it.
I reckon I could outpain Max Payne. Although I'll never forget the greatest line in that game, which was, of course, that he was trying to buy more sand for his hourglass. I wasn't selling any. What a great line. What a great line.
That's fantastic.
That's so amazing. Yeah, I'd say I had a similar experience with you, like on one of my identity-seeking phases. I didn't want to like this sort of stupid shonen, so like, and it's something like stupid in like quotation marks. I only watch smart stuff. So I wouldn't like, say, Hope to No Ken. I didn't want to open myself to the possibility of watching something like that. And I guess that changed with time. So now I'd say I'd watch just about everything, as long as it's good. I'm easy to please. Although I guess I'm also very easy to anger.
Do you like flowers? What about chocolates? How about wine?
How about all of those at the same time?
Oh wait, are we talking about the same thing? I'm not sure we are.
But you like shonen stuff now, because...
Now I like just about anything as long as it's good.
Yeah, because you're just like, you know what, like, I will decide for myself what is good and not write off huge swaths of entertainment you could possibly be enjoying.
Yeah, definitely. Genres and all stuff like that, it's just a word. It's just a category. It doesn't denote quality, it doesn't denote like what anything does with itself. It's just a word, really. And so that's how I've grown to see it, but I do realize that probably a bunch of people didn't see this when they started with anime.
And that's perfectly fine. No one immediately has an open mind. You've got to open, free your mind, if you will, in order to get to that point. And it takes time.
It's the second Matrix reference in this podcast.
I get $10.
We should probably draw the line.
I get $10 for every one I make.
Is that an accident?
You're on the take, huh, from the Wachowskis?
Yes, absolutely.
But so, like, if you've been following me on Twitter, like, you'll be very aware of the turnaround on Kyoto Animation that I've had, because I posted a great deal about Sound Euphonium. This is the first big KyoAni show that I watched free before, but, like, I don't know, like, I kind of went into it with a little bit of a different mindset. Like, it's difficult to articulate what I mean by that, but because I wasn't going into it thinking like, haha, like, let me make fun of this shitty show. I actually liked Free a whole lot, but I feel like Sound Euphonium might be more indicative of what they usually do and focus on. And again, it was that like light bulb moment for me this year. I was like, wow, like, these shows are great. Like, what have I been missing? I mean, I missed out on...
Where have you been all my life?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that's been a little bit of the theme of my year, is like shedding those filters that had been long-standing.
Like, wait, what was this? And this? And, oh my god, this?
That's right. Yes. All music in this episode was made by and used with the permission of Michael Kelly. of Sukeban games. Michael makes music inspired by older sci-fi and cyberpunk anime such as Bubblegum Crisis, Patlabor, Dirty Pair, and Ghost in the Shell. He created the music for Valhalla, a cyberpunk bartending visual novel from Sukeban. I personally find his stuff excellent, and you can check it out at garode.bandcamp.com. That's GAROAD.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/garodemusic.
悪いでしょう。
One of the main topics I wanted to at least touch on today, I'm not sure how familiar with it you'll be, kind of the anime scene where you guys live in Europe at the minute.
Right.
Like, just in terms of, like, not necessarily, like, what local otaku are doing. I mean, if you know about that, that's great, like, what's happening at conventions and whatever. But, like, I'm more, I guess, concerned with, like, what's getting released over there, and is very much of it getting released, and is it quality? Is it good? I mean, how does it compare to, you know, other markets that me and other listeners might have more knowledge of?
I'll answer with a question. What exactly do you mean by what's getting released?
So what shows are being made available to you to legally purchase?
What's readily available,
and or legally stream on sort of services. So what can you legally get your hands on, anime wise? What's been translated into English in some form or fashion?
I can field this one. You know what's funny, actually? This brings up a moment where I subscribed to Netflix quite a while back, and I realised that they had an anime section on there. And at the time, it was pathetically empty. Absolutely
I remember this time.
Pathetic. Now, for those of you who are not aware, I live in the United Kingdom. Now, there were maybe like perhaps a dozen and a half to 18 titles at most, and a lot of them was stuff that you probably already, like, quite relatively common stuff, like Bleach was on there, for example. Ruby was on there, which speaks volumes, because as much as I like Ruby, let's not mince words, it's not from Japan. So I was very disappointed in that. Now, admittedly, I was also completely oblivious to the existence of Crunchyroll, but the thing is that Netflix was the UK's service. This is what the library is available to people in the UK. So I discovered, of course, the ability to use VPN, and therefore pretend I was actually in, I don't know, Nova Scotia or somewhere. So I used that and then checked out the anime selection that was on the US version of Netflix. Not as big a library as you might otherwise hope, but immensely better than the United Kingdom's. I got to watch a couple of good shows on there before they eventually were available on the UK one. I watched Attack on Titan through that. That was a bit of a mistake. But again, topic for another time.
Oh no!
Oh yes! Oh yeah, no. I went there. Bring your torches, bring your pitchforks. I'm ready.
Sacred cows. Hey, going down.
Sacred cows make the tastiest beef. But anyway, the point is, there were so many more titles available at that same time, and all I had to do was simply install a Chrome add-on to flip me over to pretending to be from the US. And going back to what I said before about basically, fish in a barrel kind of thing when I was searching through shops to purchase anime, HMV, back when I was getting involved, it was still prominent, but it's kind of faded away now as online retailers come about. It still exists. But the anime section there, and as is now, on a relatively recent visit that I did, was very woeful. And I say woeful because a lot of it was, again, very common stuff that people would have heard of. Dragon Ball, Bleach. I think Black Butler might have been there as well, possibly. I'm stretching now.
Probably.
Here. I'm stretching my memory here. But essentially it was very limited, and it was limited specifically to the same show, but different seasons in different box sets for the most part. So I will say this. If you think you have it bad in the US, wherever you may be, for legally obtaining anime through streaming or not using localized services, you could be in the UK, where it is basically a barren wasteland. But since the internet, of course, has now become the great equalizer in what you can get a hold of illegally or legally or however, it's not really so much of a problem anymore. Crunchyroll is a thing, of course. Crunchyroll, of course, I wasn't aware of back in the time. I still have a subscription for it, mind you, but that may change. So I think from my perspective, it's... The thing is, though, when I say about these services like Crunchyroll, they're not in mainstream. Netflix is a mainstream service, because anime is not the only thing it offers, of course. It just seems that, I think, again, it's a bit of a niche thing, maybe anime, as far as the perspective goes. But what you said about conventions, though, Doc, I went to Manchester Comic-Con in July of this year, and there was definitely no shortage of people dressing up in anime costumes from various shows that they were fond of. That was very obvious. I mean, I saw Okabe and Kurisu from Steins Gate. I should point out that I was heavily considering cosplaying as Mr. Braun, but I didn't actually end up doing it because I couldn't find the time to actually, or the money to purchase a I Heart CRT apron. I believe me, I could pull it off. I've got the face for it and the facial hair. But anyway, which of
That'd
course
be a great cosplay.
Which of course,
fantastic.
Which of course now means everyone who's listening to this podcast is going to just imagine me as Mr. Braun from here on out.
There are worse things.
That is very true. Also, I got to see... I actually saw pictures of these guys. There were guys, I say guys very strictly, dressed up as the characters from Madoka Magica.
Okay. Yes.
Cross-dressing. This was in... Now, the thing is, this was in Comic-Con. Big public place. And no sweat on their part, no shame, much respect to them for doing it. In particular, there was an absolutely inspired bit by one of the guys who was dressed up as Kyubey, but he was wearing a full white suit. So he was basically like a salesman, and I thought that was absolutely genius.
With like a Kyubey head?
Yeah, Kyubey head, but giant white suit, and he had a clipboard with a contract.
Oh my god.
That is absolutely perfect.
Absolutely perfect. It was genius. Absolute genius.
Oh my god.
Yeah, surprising number of Madoka cosplayers, other ones as well. So I think that maybe it's just the case that a lot of people are aware of it, but I think that it's one of those questions of supply and demand in that the legally available local services or tailored services such as Netflix and whatever, and what you might find on subscription channels like traditional TV, you're not going to find much in the UK. If you want to, however, go further afield and use Crunchyroll and the like, you'll be fine. Basically, there are plenty of fans out there of anime in the United Kingdom, especially from what I saw at Comic-Con, and kudos to the guys who put in the effort.
Well, how big is that convention?
How best to describe it? The hall it was in was the size of a big ice rink, essentially, but if not bigger than that. There were, if I had to spitball, maybe 2,000 people there.
Okay.
So quite a substantial number.
Was there a lot going on, like programming-wise, for anime?
Not particularly. I think they had the voice actress who actually voices Naruto there, of all things.
Oh, that's interesting.
She was there,
cool.
taking interviews and such. There was a lot of sales of anime-related merchandise, though. That was very much a big thing there.
Okay.
I mean, it was essentially either anime-related or superhero/Marvel/DC merchandise. Replica weapons, for example, things like that. And there are a couple of other niche shops as well. So very well represented there, I would say, in terms of what was being sold and also what was people doing. I mean, that was the place where I picked up what had been unavailable such a long time, and I wanted to get a DVD copy of The Wings of Hanamai's.
Oh, you got that there?
Yep, I got that there. Fantastic.
Oh, Oniami's. That's a wonderful film.
Absolutely wonderful film. Loved every second of it.
Well, there's one scene that I think is a bit unnecessary.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're referring to.
But it does not ruin the movie for me by any means.
It is a black mark on it, but it's like saying that you got 98 out of 100 on an exam.
It's true.
Yeah, you cocked up on one question, but that's...
I mean, and it's a royal cock-up. I mean, let's not...
Yeah, let's not mince words on it. It's not... It was a massive mistake, but... Anyway...
But they have in interviews since discussed kind of what they were going for, and if you look those up, you can see the reasoning, but it was just a poor choice.
I mean, I myself get the idea behind what they were going with there, but I think that the moment in question, there was not the necessary build up or the push down, if you will. The character was not pushed to that point.
Yeah, right. This is the cagiest discussion of a plot point ever. It's great.
He tried to rape her.
It's unfortunate and true.
Yes, he tried. Yeah, he was otherwise. He wasn't pushed far enough. I mean, don't miss. This is now dicey territory because we're discussing that particular topic. But I'll be very, very frank. No, under no circumstances acceptable. But I can at least understand the logic in which a man might be pushed to make an action like that, but that did not happen.
Please don't take this out of context and put it on YouTube or something.
Oh, it's going to happen. I'm dead.
I'm not going to do that. I swear. Don't look at me.
That would be very disingenuous. I mean, I think it's pretty clear what we're saying is that, like, in terms of this particular narrative, the characters' motivations in this fictional story, they make sense to you. You can see the through line of his thought. You're not condoning his act, and you're not condoning the act in real life, etc., etc.
Yeah, you can kind of make a parallel with killing people. Kind of the same thing. You can see what can drive someone to kill people, right? But you don't condone killing people.
Yeah.
Except killing people is a more socially acceptable subject to talk about for some reason.
It's cool. It's cool. Just don't kill a dog in a movie. Then we're done.
Aww.
Unless the film is Old Yeller.
Or any dog movie, because the dog always dies at the end. Motherfucker. That's why it's so goddamn sad. Vorgalia, can you, where you are, can you kind of walk into a store and buy anime, or is it not that readily available?
I don't know. I don't go outside.
It's right. You're a NEET with a job.
The bigger stores sort of have anime. Some of it, kinda, but it's not even mainstream, not even niche. It's like a bunch of people watch it on their own and pay no special attention to it, or they're social outcasts, or it's probably socially acceptable, but it's not really pushed as a form of entertainment, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So it's not. It might be. I don't know how broadly anime is watched or whatever, but not very openly.
So many companies are so secretive about sales numbers and things. It's very difficult for me anyway to get a read on in America or other territories how much a title is selling, how well they're doing, how many people are watching this shit. Japan releases some numbers, but if you go to the Oricon charts, you can see what's selling there. But even Oricon doesn't count things like Amazon.jp, so they're incomplete numbers as far as that goes.
Well, it's good if incomplete numbers are a low point, so it can only be higher than the incomplete numbers, so which kind of gives you can get an idea, sort of.
But even then, these metrics don't necessarily speak to the quality of the show itself.
Oh God! That's absolutely true with any entertainment,
which muddies the waters even more.
Yes,
because you could.
Transformers sold a lot, so it must be the best movie ever.
Conversely, I'm going to bring up Gundam again. The currently airing Gundam series called Iron-Blooded Orphans is absolutely tanking in the ratings, but I think it's the best Gundam television show that's come out in 15 years. I absolutely adore it, and but people don't like it in Japan, so it that just speaks to your point. Popularity not indicative of quality.
No, you can have a consensus on what is good and bad, but there's a difference between consensus and objective truth. I would love nothing more in this world than to have it be that something that is liked by a lot of people is rewarded by a lot of people then actually watching it. But again, a lot of people in both those contexts is a different thing.
And just to round off the discussion, over here in America, so I guess to be, again, not to mince words and be real, anime is kind of a niche property, even in Japan. It's certainly more ubiquitous there than here or the UK, I think. But it's still seen, unlike manga, comic books, which are much more mainstream. Anime is kind of seen as a nerdy fare, and as such, a lot of it comes on very late at night.
As a children's show, basically.
Well, there are types, right? There's children's shows, will come on Saturday, Sunday mornings, and you have those things like Precure, right? Is this long-running magical girl franchise that a lot of adult males here enjoy for different reasons that we won't go into. But you have things like that. But then you also have, adult-oriented fare like Steins Gate.
Yeah.
That they're not seen as children's fare, but they're seen as like shows for nerdy males in late teens, early 20s, socially awkward dudes.
I think that there's a preconception, and possibly maybe you could call it a stigma maybe, with animation in general, not just anime, but Western animation as well. Even if, granted, a lot of Western animation is made in Korea, but that's beside the point. That the earliest cartoons were, of course, the Disney stuff. I mean, also like Bugs Bunny, things like that, Looney Tunes. But they were very explicitly aimed as kids, and as that being the foundation as the earliest animated works there were, I think that maybe there's a perception since then that animation is only for kids. But, and this is a big but, animation is just a method of conveyance. It does not necessarily imply the subject matter in of itself. You could do animated works about incredibly deep and graphic and horrible stuff, and conversely, you can do live-action shows that are very explicitly aimed at children. I mean, one of the most popular kids shows over in the UK in the past was one called, and you've probably heard of it, and Christ, I can't believe I'm bringing this up, but here we go, it's called Teletubbies. Live action.
Yay.
Abort! Let's go back to Paul Blart Mall
I can't believe I brought it up. But my point is basically that the medium in which you convey it, live action, animation, puppets, whatever, that does not necessarily imply the content, but there is a very ingrained societal preconception as to what you can get from that. If it's a cartoon, it's automatically for kids. If it's live action, it's automatically for adults.
You see this with a lot of individual forms of entertainment as well, like video games.
Oh yeah, video games are preconceived as a toy, despite the fact that they are very clearly not, although some of them can be. I would argue that Minecraft is a toy, because it essentially replicates the constructive process of Lego. But it is also a video game.
Do you not think video games have kind of broken through, though, and become a mainstream entertainment?
People around here view games as not even toys, but like challenges of mental dexterity, like Pac-Man. That's how people view video games to this day. Like high scores, get the high score. Where I live as well. I mean, at least
it makes sense. I mean, they're struggling to get legitimacy as an art form as well. So you're right.
My perspective is from a legal one, in that there continues to be very inconsistent application of censorship and standards and practices when it comes to video games versus live action.
It's true. They're protected in America as they have First Amendment protection.
First Amendment, yep, absolutely.
But I know in many countries, Australia is particularly bad, or particularly maybe bad. I don't want to necessarily qualitatively judge us, but they're much more stringent and cut a lot more.
There's no subjective argument about it, because for the longest time, Australia did not have an R18 rating for video games. So if it didn't meet the requirement of being an R15, then it wouldn't get released in Australia, period. And that happened with a number of titles.
Yeah, Doom was released in 2012 in Australia for the first time ever.
What?
Doom? Like original Doom?
Original Doom.
My head has just exploded. Please give me a second to reassemble
it. My God.
That is absolutely ridiculous. You're next going to tell me that Doom 3 was released before that. If that actually turns out to be true, I think I might possibly just die of, blood loss right there and then.
Don't do it on the podcast.
Yeah, I'll try not to leave a mess while I'm at it. But like I say though, there is that difference of opinion amongst mediums in general that seems to be ingrained from their initial conception. Like, we haven't moved on. Basically, our mindsets and stereotypes have not evolved with the mediums themselves.
It's true. I mean, and there are exceptions, I think, to all these kind of stereotypes. Like, we mentioned Studio Ghibli director Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata, as well as another famous director from there. They're viewed as legitimate artists in Japan, even though they make, animation. Even though Miyazaki himself would say, "I don't make animation, I make films." Yeah. So he's kind of disparaging that element. But Ghibli and its IP, they're in a way seen as separate from a lot of the late night, visual novel-esque anime that will occur. But they're the government has created some funding projects to give money to artists and anime studios. So, I mean, they're trying to change these different perceptions, but the thing I meant to say before I kind of went off on a tangent about Japan was you said something, Shadon, earlier about if you think you have it bad in the U.S., and I just want to put out there, the United States has it so fucking good when it comes to anime. Like, people truly should not complain. It is cheaper than it has ever been to be a huge otaku. You could pay $7 or $8 a month for Crunchyroll, and you can supplement that with Hulu and Netflix, which you probably already have to watch your Breaking Bads and what have you. And there's plenty of anime there. Anime in physical media is cheaper than it's ever been, despite cost of anime being it's costly.
Box sets over here, I mean, just broadly speaking, because of the British pound, are more expensive than they would be elsewhere.
And you're not in the same Blu-ray region as us, so you can't reverse import.
Nope. Well, thank you very much, PAL.
Which, that sucks.
Region locking is the worst thing.
Yep.
The local companies got to protect their interests, man.
What interest do you protect?
Well, you don't want to... So in, like, Shadon's case, right? So I'm unfamiliar with the particular anime distributors that distribute in the UK, but I know Manga UK. So let's say Manga UK is releasing a film on Blu-ray that is, we'll say, £25. But say that same film is $25 in America. If there was no region locking, everyone would buy the American release rather than the Manga UK British release.
Region locking is on the Blu-ray players, right? Not on the Blu-rays themselves.
That's correct.
So what's what?
Oh, I see
what do the manufacturers get from having their players?
It's probably cheaper to just have it be specific only to a certain region, I would suspect. Manufacturing costs.
We need Anime News Network's Justin Savakis to make an appearance on the show and explain this to us.
Someone put out the AAN signal!
Justin, help.
Anime! I will never ever do that again.
Thank Christ.
We'll make it better with post-production magic.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of that.
Oh, yes. We have it great over here. I mean, we really do, and basically I just wanted to glean whatever I could from you guys about how, like, the pricing of anime and the selection over there. But as you said, the internet is the great equalizer, so in many cases it's quite easy, just to hop on Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
But they also have, region restrictions there. Like, I know Canada, can feel particularly aggrieved for not getting the same shows that we do.
That's too nice to complain, though.
That's true. They just, like, you can feel the hand wringing when they're typing out. And with that, we will take a break. We'll be back on Warui Deshou.
Narutaki's Detective Journal, Entry 108. It was a dark and stormy night. I took shelter at my favorite bean joint from the oppressive rain that blanketed Steam City like a straitjacket. It was a dive that smelled like a brewery, but it was home. Just as I tried to warm my frame with some piping hot liquid courage, he walked in the door. He was a knockout blonde with legs up to his neck. Just my type. But I could tell from the look in his gorgeous blue eyes that romance would have to wait. He had a case. It seemed that mecha anime was disappearing from his schedules left and right, and I might just be the only Seamus that could stop it from fading away forever.
The Speakeasy Podcast with Hisui and Narutaki, the internet's best and only alcohol-themed anime podcast. Sit down and let us pour you a drink once a month as we explore the deeper mysteries of anime and manga. We always have a seat free for you at reversethieves.com.
Warui Deshou.
Welcome back to Warui Deshou.
It's been hours.
And I don't know what's happened.
I'm handcuffed to my bed.
What we're going to talk about now.
I don't know how, but I'm here.
Blacked out. Now it's like 5
Please send
hours
help.
later. Welcome back to
Please
our
send
show.
help. Everything's black.
Are your pants off?
Maybe I might be.
Are your pants
maybe
off
there's
this
no lights
time?
on. Or maybe someone's playing
are
a
you
horrible practical
blindfolded?
joke on me. Maybe someone's glued my eyelids shut. I'm not sure.
Are you being forced to consume Odin, Space, Photon, Mutiny, Sailor, Starlight?
No, that
horrible garbage.
That's after they finished removing my fingernails because they figured they'd get the easier part out first.
Well, still Vorgalia, still Doc, still Shadon here, and this is normally the part in the show where we would do correspondence, or we do hate mail and corrections and wish longingly for someone to write a glowing, loving email to us, but it never happens.
This would be the part of the show where I start swiping through Tinder.
Well, I do have one piece of correspondence. It's from Ben. Why are you doing a podcast on anime anyway? Thank you for your Thank you for your.
What would Ben prefer us to be doing the podcast on? Would he prefer us doing on the quality of truffles found in Eastern Europe?
Well, thank you for your contribution to this first episode.
I'm doing this because I like to talk to people.
Yeah.
And I like to have a good discussion.
No, and genuinely, I enjoy talking with Vorgalia and Shadon very much, and I know that they like anime. I like anime. We can talk about it and learn some stuff and have some fun.
That we can. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the joy of... I mean, at the end of the day, why do we talk about anything? I mean, anime itself is not necessarily like, the one thing that you should know to talk about. Why do we talk about films that we watch? Why, for example, when you leave the cinema, do you speak with your friends? Why did you like that? What did you think of that? Because it's interesting to get other people's opinions. You may not necessarily agree with them. You may want to punch them really hard for liking a particular thing that you think is absolute trash. I mean, I have. But anyway, that's beside the point. But that's the whole thing. There's discourse to be had, and I think that it's always fascinating and intellectually stimulating to do that. And you can have a good laugh about it as well, especially if what you're referring to is the consensus is that it's terrible. Like the time I went to see Battleship. Yes.
Fuck.
I willingly paid money I had worked hard to earn to watch Battleship. Yes.
Motherfucker.
I went there in the hope that I would be able to do a MST3K kind of riff on it, but after about maybe 20 minutes of trying to take the piss out of the film in my head, I just kind of lost all the
was
energy.
the theater empty?
No.
Could you
that
just
was
talk to
also
yourself in the theater because it was empty?
It was empty of people of rational thought and also souls. They were just hollow shells.
Oh, damn.
But, yeah. So, even then, in that example, we had a good laugh at its expense afterwards, although I think that was more like consolation. It was more like being awake than anything. But that's the whole thing. Like, when you watch something that you're interested in and you have opinions on, sometimes just speaking with people just to see if like maybe they spoiled things you didn't. Maybe you just come to it's just in of itself a fun activity. I would argue.
I've used this expression like twice already, but it's a vehicle for human interaction. It gives you a subject, and you get to know the other person through what's been said, what they have to say about something that can be interpreted in many ways.
That's beautifully put, Vorgalia. If you'd like to get a hold of us, so you can tweet me at the Subtle Doctor. You can ask me if you want to have a longer form answer from me to anything in particular. You can go to ask.fm/thesubtledoctor. I also have an anime blog where I write stuff. And this week, actually, starting today, which is December 14th, for the next 12 days, there will be from me a post going up every day. Sort of an anime blogging tradition to do something called 12 Days of Anime, or just pick out 12 kind of moments or things about stuff you saw this year that you liked. So if you're interested in opinions on stuff that I have seen this year, check that out. It's rayoutblog.wordpress.com. But the address of my writing will be moving in the future, but we will talk more about that on a following episode. So if people wanted to find you guys on the internet, how would they?
Well, firstly, don't go on my Facebook because all the pictures are embarrassing. I may also possibly be on Tinder. I'm actually not, that's a lie. No, on a serious note, you can find me on Twitter at Shaden1010. That is Shaden, Sierra Hotel Alpha Delta Oscar November 1010. What? Do not mock the phonetic alphabet. I will...
Breaker.
I will find you, Vorg. I will find you. Not going to say what's
How
going to happen, but I'll find you.
indecent.
Yes, very indecent. Also, I do indeed have an Ask.fm, so it's also ask.fm/Shaden1010. And for those of you who might be fighting game fans who have Guilty Gear Xrd on the PC, you can find me on my Steam ID of Just Shaden, and I have a Commander Keen icon in case there happens to be anyone else trying to steal my name.
Want to play Xrd? Want to play Xrd at some point or something?
Great, I'm going to hurt you for what you did making me play that piece of shit game.
I play Faust.
I don't care. I do not care what character you play. I'm going to make you bleed.
Oh.
Faust is pretty great.
What's your favorite website? You can find me on it. Your favorite website here /Vergalia. I'm Vergalia on everything. Don't follow me on Twitter. You'll regret it.
I don't regret it.
Oh, you don't?
You really will.
No,
that's not true.
Yes, everything. Every single
Not at
thing.
all. And your PSN is also Vergalia, right? Mine is the Subtle Doc. If you're speaking, Shadan made me remember. I play fighting games too. That's where we all met. So
that's yes. The picture of Yukari I can see here in the Skype picture is a big giveaway.
That's right. Yes.
My PSN is Shane1010. I'm not currently active on there a lot though because I've now got PC version of Xrd, so sorry.
I have no version of Xrd. I'm still playing Unil, still playing Persona 4 Arena, and still playing Third Strike because it's the best fighting game ever made.
Oh, it was you! We played Third Strike with you.
It was me. It was me.
And I remember.
Yes, that was very fun. We'll have to do that again.
We will.
But for now,
yep.
I guess that's going to be all from Warui Deshou, episode 0. Shadan, it was a pleasure.
Hey, pleasure's all mine, Doc. Thank you very much for having me.
Forgalia, lovely to speak with you as always.
Thank you very much. Likewise.
And that's it, everybody. Thanks for listening.
See you soon, folks.
That's our show, folks. But before we go, a little housekeeping. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email waruideshou@gmail.com. That's WARUIDESHOU@gmail.com. We might read and respond to your email on the show. The show does have a Twitter account, but it's mainly used to announce new episodes, so you're better off using our personal Twitters or ask.fms to reach us. If you found the show on iTunes and you could leave us a rating and review, we would be most appreciative. Or like, subscribe, and or follow us on whichever service we're on that's meeting your listening needs. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you join us again next time.
またね。